My name is Ronnie Cruz, and this is Path of the Network Marketer.
All right, welcome back to the show. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to talk about the difference between growing a following, growing an audience, and growing a community. All right, this is going to be a good topic because it kind of, it's a good segue from yesterday's conversation about content creation, right? And so with content creation, the purpose is growing a presence. Part of that presence, the evolution of growing that presence online will go through having a following, having an audience, and having a community, and really the different mindsets between the three things, and it'll equate to three different business models, so to speak. So the first thing, so before I really dive into it, I want to let you know that this topic was inspired by a recent episode of Lori Harder's show, Earn Your Happy. With Lori Harder. They were talking about, she had a guest on, and I can't remember the life of my name. I can't remember for the life of me the name of the individual who was their guest. I'll leave it in the show notes of this episode so you can go listen to it. It's a really good episode. But they were talking about how building communities, especially online, and using your marketing strategies to build those communities is really, really an important part of marketing in moving forward 2023 and beyond, right? Like the community aspect is so important, and this is something I've been really cognizant of. So it's nice to know that, well, just for me personally, my own edification, to know that kind of, the track I'm on, where I am in my head, it's a little bit, I don't know. Yeah, it's nice to get a little bit of validation that I at least feel like, according to what they're saying, I feel like I'm on the right track, right? Because I've been talking about community for a long time. Since pandemic, it was really just at the forefront of conversation that we have to remember to continue building communities, and that now, well, during that time that we were in all quarantine. Finding ways to continue to do that virtually, right? And so that conversation continues today, and I've always had that philosophy of, we just got to continue to foster communities, because that's the glue, right? Like, that's the stickiness. Even early in this podcast, I talked about the differences of, the two prevailing philosophies and mindsets and operating systems in network marketing itself. Is it profit driven or is it community driven? And I've always talked about being community driven. And so with marketing and content creation, especially, you want to definitely have that in mind. I always talk about building an audience as opposed to a following. So let's break it down. With building a following, right? I think this is it's not good or bad. You know what I mean? Like this conversation isn't about good or bad. It's just that these three things serve different purposes, right? If you're on social media, if you're a content creator and you're building a following, that's awesome. Build that following. You want those metrics to grow, because that number is what's going to be the thing that you can leverage, right? That you can translate into whatever cash flow, into sponsorships, into paid partnerships and promotions, right? And so that's really just kind of the first step into what it means to be an influencer, right? Like, that's kind of first level, phase one influencer is using you're leveraging your following, and translating that into whatever kind of cash flow situation or profitability, right? In that particular scenario, you're leveraging just sheer number, right? Just sheer number, because the number, and not just the following, obviously the number of followers, the engagement, and all that stuff, right? Those vanity type metrics, views and likes and comments and things like that. The sheer number and quantity of those things, is what you're going to be able to leverage into some sort of exchange of cash, right? So that's where following is, right? Building and growing a following. With growing an audience, it's more interactive, right? Like it's more of a communication, because it's not so much just like look at me, look at me, look at me, and follow me, follow me, follow me, and then working to make sure you keep those eyes on you. In building an audience, it's actually communicating specific messages and ideas and principles and perspectives, right? With building an audience, you actually also can build more of an influence, right? So you don't necessarily need to rely on as big a numbers. If you have a great message and you've built a loyal audience, that they're going to get to know you, like you, and trust you because of again, your messaging and your story and your perspective and the value that you're bringing. Then you'll ultimately have more influence. You won't necessarily need to rely as heavily on sponsorships, paid partnerships, and things like that. You can actually leverage your influence into selling whatever you want to sell. You can create your own products. A lot of people who have big audiences have big influence and strong influence with their audience can sell events, can sell programs, can sell training courses and books and things like that. And they don't necessarily need as large an audience to be wildly successful, as large a following, excuse me, because they have a bigger influence on that audience. So that's where that scenario is. And then when you take community into the situation, that's kind of the next iteration or the next phase, is that you're taking your online presence, and not only are you building an audience, a following and an audience and an influence, but you're growing that within a community so that it perpetuates itself, right? You create even more loyalty, and in a community. I love this explanation that they talked about on the show, on Lori Harder's podcast. It's like, in the other scenarios, it's you talking to your audience and communicating to your audience. In a community setting, your audience gets to interact and talk to each other, right? They get to communicate and connect with each other, right? And that's really awesome, because I think that can exponentially grow whatever it is that you're trying to grow, the idea, the concept, the principles, and therefore your bottom line with the programs and the products or services that you're actually marketing and selling. It creates its own synergy and momentum within that community, right? And so that's, it's so awesome from a marketing standpoint, and it's really super important. Now, you want to build, when you're building a community, you don't want it necessarily to be for the sole purpose of boosting your profits, right? The boost and the growth in business and profits comes as a side effect of growing a healthy, viable community that nurtures relationships, that fosters individual growth of the members in that community, right? You have to give them a reason to be there. And one of the things that I really loved, I posted a quote about it today, is I posted about this on it was a quote from Julie Solomon. And see, this is how cool this is, because a lot of people are talking about community right now. Julie Solomon, in a show, in one of her recent episodes, the Influencer podcast, she said, create a community where people see, figure out what the ideal outcome and result and behavior of your audience is, and help foster that in the community. Something like that. I'm paraphrasing. It's like, create a community where people see the ideal outcome and behaviors that they want for themselves, right? It's their dream outcomes. They see that happening in the community. They see the community as being a way for them as a place that can help them achieve those things. Then they're going to be there all day long, right? So it's really, community is all about nurturing the individuals to their outcomes, supporting them in what they need, and guiding them, right? And then they in turn start to do that with each other, and it starts to take a life of its own, right? Like an aspect of your business will start to grow without you having to just like churn 24/7. So it's really a great conversation, and Lori's podcast that I listened to, the episode that I listened to really woke me up to the differences between the three of those things, right? The following, the audience, and the community. All are great. All work differently, right? Understand that. And I for one love building, an audience, and then as a result of that audience, really segueing people into a community where they can level themselves up, and therefore, it just grows and grows and grows. It perpetuates itself, right? So, yeah. Hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions about this, come join us in our community, facebook.com/groups/path of the network marketer. We can continue having this discussions. But yeah. I love it. It was kind of a nice light bulb moment for me today. When I had these realizations. Thanks to Lori Harder and her guest, which I will link in the show notes of this episode. I'll also link Julie Solomon's episode about community in the show notes of this episode. So that's it for today. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you tomorrow with a fresh new one. Until then, be well, be safe. We'll see you in the next episode.